Please, just don't send me back, the boy whispered, his voice shaking as he stood in the huge white hallway with the shiny floor. His small duffel bag hung from one shoulder, and his dark brown eyes moved from the big staircase to the tall windows to the fancy art on the wall, like he had stepped into a TV show instead of a real house. He was 14, skinny, black, and tired in a way that went deeper than his bones, and his name was Jaden. The rich woman in front of him, Mrs. Whitmore, did not answer right away. She just smoothed the sleeve of her cream sweater and gave a tight smile that did not touch her blue eyes. "We're only a temporary placement," she said to the social worker beside him, not even looking at Jaden as she spoke. "Just until you find a more suitable family, like we discussed." The word suitable landed on Jaden's ears like a slap, and he swallowed hard, trying to stand up straighter, trying to make his worn sneakers look less torn, trying to make his whole self smaller and less in the way. The social worker, Ms. Perez, put a light hand on his shoulder and gave him a fast, soft look that said she wished things were different, but knew they were not. "It's just for a little while, Jaden," she said gently. "The Whitmores have a big house, a safe neighborhood, and a good school. It will be okay." He nodded because what else could he do, but inside his chest, his heart curled up like a fist. Mr. Whitmore came out from a room that looked like an office, talking into a phone with a voice that sounded like it was used to people listening. "Yes, tell Peter to email the files to Anderson," he said, then glanced at them and gave a short nod before turning away, still on the call. He was tall, with silver hair and a dark blue suit that looked like it had never seen a wrinkle. Jaden knew that nod. He had seen it from teachers and cops and foster parents who did not want to bother learning his name. It meant, "I see you, but not really." He forced himself to smile anyway, his fingers gripping the strap of his bag so hard it hurt. If he messed this up, if they sent him back to the group home again, he was not sure his heart could take it. They showed him his room, but it did not feel like his. The bedspread was white, the desk was empty, and the only picture on the wall was a black and white photo of a bridge. There were no posters, no sneakers lined up, no little mess that said a kid really lived there. It looked more like a guest room in a hotel. Mrs. Whitmore pointed to the closet, her diamond bracelet shining under the light. "You can hang your clothes there," she said. "Dinner is at 6, sharp. We don't do snacks between meals. And no TV in your room. We like to keep the upstairs quiet." Her voice was polite, not mean, but also not warm, like she was talking about a new chair that had been delivered, not a living boy. Jaden nodded and mumbled, "Yes, ma'am," because he had learned that yes, ma'am and no, sir were like magic keys that sometimes kept adults calm. When she left, closing the door with a soft click, he sat on the edge of the bed and let out a long breath. The silence of the big house pressed in on him, thicker than the noise of the group home he had just left, and for a second he missed the sound of other kids and the TV always on in the background. At dinner, he sat at the long table, the fork heavy in his hand as he tried to remember which one was for salad and which was for meat, because he had seen it in movies but never in real life. Mrs. Whitmore talked about a charity event. Mr. Whitmore talked about the stock market and a trip to New York, and both of them talked over him like he was part of the fancy table, something that did not need to be asked anything. They did not ask what school he had come from or what he liked or if he was allergic to anything. They just told him the rules about laundry day and homework and how he was not to touch anything in Mr. Whitmore's office. "How long will he be with us again?" Mr. Whitmore asked at one point, looking past Jaden to his wife. "The agency said 3 to 6 months," she answered, "until they find a permanent solution." Jaden pushed his peas around his plate, his throat tight. He was sitting in a house that could fit his old apartment 3 times over, but somehow he had never felt smaller. Days slid into each other like gray pages. The Whitmore's house in the fancy Atlanta suburb had a pool covered for winter, a movie room, and a kitchen bigger than any classroom Jaden had ever sat in. But most of it stayed quiet, like a museum. Mr. Whitmore left early and came back late, always smelling like cologne and cold air. With his phone glued to his hand, Mrs. Whitmore spent hours on her laptop at the marble counter, planning fundraisers and sending emails about the Whitmore Foundation for Children, which Jaden saw on the website one day when he passed behind her. The logo had 3 smiling kids holding hands, but none of them looked like him. At school, the other students looked at him in his plain jeans and thrift store hoodie, then at the car that picked him up, a black SUV with leather seats, and their eyes got wide. Some tried to be his friend because they thought he was rich now. Others whispered that he was the foster kid and acted like he carried trouble in his backpack. When he got home, Mrs. Whitmore would ask, "Homework done?" without looking up, and if he said yes, she would say, "Good," and go back to her emails. More than once, he heard them talking in low voices when they thought he was upstairs. "He's quiet, at least," Mrs. Whitmore would say. "We just have to get through the year." "It looks good for the foundation," Mr. Whitmore would answer. The words "looks good" stung in a way that even yelling never had. One night, as Jaden came down for water, he stopped when he heard another name in their talk. "Remember, Margaret, the lawyer is coming on Friday," Mr. Whitmore said. "We need to go over the trust, the board seats, all of it." Green said, "The paperwork is ready." At the sound of that last name, Jaden's hand froze on the railing. Green. His heart thumped hard in his chest. He knew that name. He saw, in his mind, a tall black man with kind eyes and a sharp voice standing beside him in a courtroom, putting a hand on his shoulder as the judge spoke. "My name is Mr. Green," the lawyer had said back then, handing him a card, even though Jaden could not keep a phone. "If anybody treats you less than you deserve, you remember you have a voice, and I'm going to help you use it." That day in court, months ago, had been one of the only times Jaden had felt like an adult was really on his side. He had sat at the long wooden table, swinging his legs because the chair was too high, while the judge and the CPS worker talked fast about placements and resources and behavior reports. It had all sounded like one long grown-up word. "Problem?" Then Mr. Green had cleared his throat and said, "Your Honor, if I may." His voice had been calm but strong, and he talked about Jaden's good grades, the way he helped younger kids at the group home with homework. The truth behind a fight that had gone into his file as aggression but had really been him stepping in. When a bigger boy stole a little girl's doll, Jaden had watched the judge's face soften just a bit, watched the pen slow on the paper. After the hearing, Mr. Green had crouched down to Jaden's level. "You remember something for me," he had said. "You are not a case number. You are not a problem to be moved around. You are a kid with rights. When you get scared, say my name in your head and remember, I'm out there trying to make this system a little less rough." So when Jaden heard Mr. Whitmore say Green, his heart jumped. Was it the same lawyer? It had to be. How many lawyers named Green could there be who worked with kids like him and rich people like the Whitmores? He went back up to his room, with the water forgotten, his mind spinning. If it was the same man, it meant the small world of rooms, where adults talked about his life, had just crashed right into this big house, where he felt invisible. All week, the name sat under his tongue like a secret coin. The Whitmores acted normal, which for them meant they were polite and distant, talking more about new art for the living room than the boys sitting at their table. At school, his teacher, Ms. Collins, asked him to stay after class one day and told him he had real talent in writing, that his short story about a boy walking through doors that always led to the same room had made her cry. He nodded and said thank you, then went home to a place that did not feel like home at all. Friday came cold and bright, the winter sun bouncing off the long driveway and the tall iron gate. Mrs. Whitmore was in a nicer dress than usual, her makeup perfect, her hair smooth in a way that said someone else had done it. Mr. Whitmore wore a different dark blue suit, maybe more expensive, if that was even possible. "Remember, Jaden," Mrs. Whitmore said briskly as she moved around the kitchen. "Mr. Green is coming to talk about some very grown-up things. You stay upstairs while we meet. You have video games. You have books. We'll call you when dinner is ready." She did not say it mean, just final, like there was no world in which his voice would matter in that room. Jaden nodded, his stomach tight, fingers pressing into the phone. Ms. Perez had finally gotten him last month. On it was one number in his contacts, Greenlaw office. He had never called it. He was scared that if he used it wrong, the one person who seemed to care would disappear. When the black car pulled up, Jaden watched from the top of the stairs, hidden by the banister. The man who got out was exactly who he remembered, and yet somehow, even sharper in this rich setting. Mr. Green wore a simple gray suit, his dark brown skin standing out against the white stone of the house, his eyes alert as he took it all in. Mr. Whitmore shook his hand like they were equals, which of course they were, but in a different way than when Green had knelt next to Jaden at the courthouse. "Good to see you, Thomas," the lawyer said. "Let's get this done." They moved into the office, and Jaden could hear the low murmur of voices, the rise and fall of words he could not make out. He went to his room, sat on the bed, stood up again, paced, then finally, his chest burning. He walked back to the top of the stairs and sat on the carpet where he could see the office door. He was so tired of being the kid people talked about but did not talk to. He thought about all the homes, all the times adults had made choices for him without looking him in the eye, like he was a package being shipped instead of a person. He thought about Mr. Green telling the judge he deserves a say in what happens to him. His hands were shaking as he pressed them into the steps. From the office, he heard Mr. Whitmore's voice float out, clear for 1 second, as the door cracked open. "And the foster kid is just here for a few months, Green. We're doing our part. After that, the state can place him anywhere." The words hit Jaden like cold water. They were not even planning to think of adoption. He was a showpiece for their foundation, a checkmark on some secret list. Before he knew what he was doing, before his fear could clamp its hand over his mouth, he stood up, walked down the last few steps, and pushed the office door open wider. All 3 adults turned. For a heartbeat, the room went silent. The big wooden desk sat between them and him like a wall, papers spread out, a leather folder open, a glass of water with no rings on the polish. Mr. Whitmore's mouth was open, ready to scold him. Mrs. Whitmore's eyes were wide, a flash of anger and worry mixing there. But Jaden did not look at them first. His eyes went straight to the man in the gray suit. "Hi, Mr. Green," Jaden said, his voice not loud but strong enough to cross the thick rug and land in the middle of the room. "It's me, Jaden Carter, from Fulton County Court. You told me to remember your name?" Mr. Green's eyebrows rose, and then his face broke into something warm and shocked at the same time. "Jaden," he said, taking a half step forward, I did not know it was you they placed here. No one told me your name when they said the Whitmores had a teen in care." The color drained from Mrs. Whitmore's face, and Mr. Whitmore's jaw clenched in a way Jaden had seen in the mirror when he tried not to cry. "You know him?" Mr. Whitmore asked, his voice tight. "Personally." Mr. Green looked from the rich man to the boy, and suddenly the whole shape of the room seemed to change. The lawyer's calm eyes sharpened, catching every small flinch, every detail. "Yes," he said. "I met Jaden months ago at a hearing. I've been tracking his case since then. In fact, Thomas, he is the child I was talking about when Marcus's will came up last year." The name Marcus hung between them like a ghost. Jaden had heard it once before, when Ms. Perez told him his file had been flagged for a special placement plan, but no one had explained. Now he saw Mr. Whitmore's shoulders stiffen. "That's impossible," Mr. Whitmore snapped. "Marcus's boy was lost in the system years ago. There was no way to find him. Green, we agreed the trust would just go to the foundation if we could not locate the child. Mr. Green cut in, his voice still even, but now edged with steel. He turned back to Jaden. Your mother's name was Alicia, right? He asked gently. Jaden's heart thudded. Yes, he whispered. Alicia Carter. She died when I was 9. Mr. Green nodded slowly, then looked at the Whitmores again. Thomas, Margaret, this is him. This is the son Marcus told you about in that letter, the one he begged you to take in if anything happened to him. The state lost track, like they do with too many kids. But my office didn't stop digging. We matched records. DNA confirmed it last month. I thought you knew who you had under your roof. I thought that was why you agreed to foster him. The room seemed to tilt. Jaden grabbed the doorframe to steady himself, his brain trying to catch up. Marcus. His mom had whispered that name once, on a bad night, saying, if Marcus had lived, everything would be different, baby. He had never known what she meant. Mrs. Whitmore sank into the chair beside the desk, her hand pressed to her mouth. A framed photo on the shelf behind her caught Jaden's eye, a younger Mr. Whitmore, with his arm around a laughing black man in a basketball jersey. Both of them sweaty and happy, a trophy between them. So Marcus had been black like him. We thought it was over, she whispered. We thought. After the crash, after the agency said the boy was gone, there was nothing we could do but give money. We built the foundation in his name. Thomas, she said to her husband, her voice rising. But this whole time, Mr. Green said quietly, the boy Marcus wanted you to raise was moving from home to home, never knowing the truth. He turned to Jaden again, softer now. Your father, Marcus Johnson, and Mr. Whitmore here were best friends from high school. Marcus named him in his will as your guardian if anything happened. There is a trust in your name for school and life. That's what this meeting is really about. I came today to go over the papers, to connect that trust to your care. I did not know. He shook his head, for once at a loss for words. Heat rushed up Jaden's neck, a mix of anger and hope, so strong it almost made him dizzy. So I'm not just some random kid you took in for your website, he asked, his voice cracking. I'm the kid you promised my dad you would raise. Mr. Whitmore flinched, like the words hit him in the chest. He opened his mouth, closed it, then stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the cold blue sky. When he finally turned back, his eyes were shiny, in a way that did not match the hard man Jaden had watched all these weeks. Marcus and I were supposed to grow old together, he said slowly. We started this company with nothing but a laptop and too much coffee. When he died, I could not breathe for months. They told us his son was in the wind. I buried myself in work and money and the foundation, thinking if I wrote enough checks, it would make up for what I had failed to do. He swallowed hard. I did not want another boy in this house, not after. He glanced at a picture of a thin white teenager with sandy hair on the wall, a framed jersey under it with the name Ethan. Not after our own son died, he finished, the words rough. So when they called about a foster placement, I thought, a few months, a gesture. Not this. Jaden felt like the air had turned to thick syrup. So what now? He asked, fear inching up again. You gonna send me back because I'm too much? Because I'm Marcus's kid, and that's a lot. His hands were fists at his sides, his fingernails digging into his palms. Mr. Green stepped toward him before either Whitmore could answer. Listen to me, Jaden, he said. Legally, you have rights here. Marcus's will names Thomas and Margaret as your chosen guardians. And the trust can't just be turned into some random charity fund if you are alive and can be found. A judge can order them to honor that. But court orders can't make people love you, right? He looked hard at the rich couple. You two need to decide if you are going to keep hiding behind money and fear, or if you are going to open your home and your hearts the way your best friend asked you to. The word hearts hung in the air, soft but sharp. That night, Mr. Green stayed late, talking with all of them. Papers were explained in slow words instead of fast legal talk. Jaden sat at the big table again. But this time the adults looked at him when they spoke of his school, his future, his choices. Still, when Mr. Green finally left, promising to set a court date to make things clear, the house felt tight with leftover tension. In the hallway outside the office, Jaden turned to the Whitmores, his chest aching. "If you don't want me, just say it," he said quietly. "I've been moved before. I can handle it. What I can't handle is you looking right through me like I'm a chair." Mrs. Whitmore's face crumpled, and for the first time, she reached out and actually touched him, her hand light on his arm. "You are not a chair," she said, her voice breaking. "You are? You are Marcus's son. You are a child in my house. I don't know how to do this yet. We lost our Ethan 3 years ago. I packed up his room, I shut every door on my heart, and I told myself that was safer. Then you walked in with his same size shoes, but a different face, and I panicked. That's on me, not you." Jaden watched her carefully, not ready to trust, but not ready to shut down either. "I'm not Ethan," he said. "I won't ever be. I won't ever be your real kid, if you only see me as his shadow, or as a promise you wish you didn't make." Mrs. Whitmore nodded, tears rolling down now. "I know," she whispered. "That's what scares me. It means I have to learn you, not just remember him." Mr. Whitmore stood a few feet away, his hands jammed into his pockets, his eyes on the carpet. "Your father saved my life once," he said suddenly. "Pulled me out of a wrecked car when we were 22. I promised him I would always have his back. I failed him when I let myself believe some file that said his boy was gone and gave up looking. I won't fail him twice." He took a breath that seemed to come from deep inside his ribs. "I'm scared too, Jade. But if you can give us one more chance, I want to try to be more than a man who signs checks. I want to try to be your guardian for real. Maybe, if we both can handle the word, your dad." Over the next weeks, nothing was perfect, but everything was different. They still had rules, but now they talked about them together at the dinner table, not behind closed doors. Mrs. Whitmore started asking real questions. What kind of music Jaden liked, which food from his mom's old recipes he missed most. One Saturday, they cooked fried chicken together in the big kitchen, and she laughed when the oil popped and he jumped back too far, bumping into the fancy fridge. Mr. Whitmore came home early some nights and sat with Jaden while he did homework, not always offering help, just being there. He told stories about Marcus, about how fast he used to run, how he would sing badly on purpose to make everyone laugh, about how his eyes crinkled the same way Jaden's did when he smiled for real. Sometimes those stories made Jaden feel warm. Sometimes they made him mad, because this man had known his father when he had not. They argued once about a history grade, voices loud in the quiet house. And afterward they both sat on the couch breathing hard, surprised that the walls had not cracked. It was the first fight Jaden had ever had in a home where he did not fear being thrown out for it. When the court date came, Jaden wore the one good shirt they had bought just for this, his hair trimmed, his sneakers clean. He sat at the long table again, but this time, Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore sat on either side of him, not across. Mr. Green stood at the end, speaking clearly to the judge about the will, the trust, and the months Jaden had been with the At one point, the judge looked over her glasses and asked, "Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, do you wish to keep this as a foster arrangement tied to the trust? Or are you seeking full guardianship and adoption?" The room grew still. Jaden stared at his hands, afraid to look at their faces. He thought about all the nights on thin mattresses, all the bags packed in rushed silence, all the last looks from kids who had become his brothers and sisters for a season and then disappeared into other homes. He thought about calling Mr. Green by name in that cold office and feeling his voice finally land somewhere solid. He heard a chair scrape softly and then felt a hand, warm and a little shaky, slip into his. Mrs. Whitmore's fingers curled around his knuckles. When she spoke, her voice shook but did not break. "Your Honor," she said, "the past few months have been the hardest and most healing of our lives. Jaden is not a project for our foundation. He is not a photo for our wall. He is a boy who loves spicy chips and writes stories that make me laugh and cry. He leaves his socks everywhere and hums when he does math. He is Marcus's son, and he has become part of our family. We want full guardianship. We want to adopt him, if he will have us." The judge turned to Jaden. "And what do you want, young man?" she asked. His throat felt tight, but he forced the words out. I want them," he said, surprising himself with how true it was. "But I want them to keep seeing me. Not just Marcus's kid, not just some kid from the system, just me." Mr. Whitmore leaned in. "We can do that," he said. "We will do that." Months later, the big house did not feel like a museum anymore. There were shoes kicked off by the couch, a school trophy on the mantel with Jaden's name on it, and a picture on the fridge of all three of them at his first track meet, cheeks red from the cold, smiles wide. The Whitmore Foundation for Children changed too. Instead of just writing checks and having fancy dinners, they started a program where kids in foster care could come learn about money, college, and their rights, with real voices like Jaden's at the front of the room. On the night of the first meeting, Jaden stood in the big hall downtown, looking out at rows of kids who carried the same tired, sharp look he once had. Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore sat in the front row, not on the stage, their hands folded, listening. Mr. Green stood by the back wall, giving him a small nod. Jaden took a deep breath and began to speak, telling the truth in simple words about what it felt like to be moved around, to be unseen, to sit at fancy tables and feel like a ghost. He told them how he had learned the lawyer's name and dared to say it out loud, how that one moment had cracked open a door that had been shut for years. He did not pretend everything was perfect now. He said sometimes he still woke up scared, and sometimes the Whitmores messed up and had to say sorry, just like he did. But he also told them about family dinners where they teased each other over burnt rolls, about late-night talks in the kitchen when he could not sleep, about a desk in his room now, covered in his own drawings and notes, and not standing empty like in a hotel. When he finished, the room was quiet for a beat, and then one kid started to clap, then another, until the sound filled the space like rain. As he stepped down from the stage, Mrs. Whitmore hugged him tight, and Mr. Whitmore put a hand on his shoulder, steady and sure. Jaden looked around at the kids, the adults, the lawyer who had kept his promise, and the couple who had learned to keep theirs, and he felt something heavy and hard inside him finally soften. In that moment, he knew the truth of it deep in his bones. The real measure of any person's wealth is not in their house or their bank, but in how fully they choose to see, hear, and stand beside the child the world tries so hard to ignore.